What's good, fellow CEOs? Welcome to the Irony of Gaming. Today we're going to be going over gear sets, and by the title of this video, what gear to use your set and tuning binaries on. Now, there are 5 gear types you should prioritize your resources to, and that's Maze, Gordius, Swift, Wild, and Flame. Now, for Wild and Flame gear, it's good to have at least 1 or 2 full sets of them. And any other SSR gear, which is the gold colored ones, is secondary. They can be useful and beneficial, but overall most are experimental and sometimes can act as an alternative depending on the situation. Okay, so you know what gear types to go for, but what set options and substats do you choose? Well, before continuing on, I just want to first say that this is my humble opinion on when it's a good time to invest in your gear. I wanted to let you know that there are hundreds of combinations, hundreds of them, and there's plenty that you could experiment with in fixing the stats for your gear. But in this video, these are the sets that I use to get through the PvE content and even some PvP as well. So let's get to it, starting with Maze gear. Okay, so we're going into the Maze section. So as you can see here, for the first option over here, it's automatically locked. The game locks it, so you don't really have to choose or worry about what you're going to choose from on here. Now, the second options for here, you can definitely customize it to how you want to change it based off of the options that are available to it. Now, one of the ones that I usually would recommend would be skill haste. You could do crit damage. Believe it or not, if you have a nice set of crit damage for all 4, you can be doing unexpected damage, higher damage than you normally would if you were to crit, giving that to specific units who can be DPSs. This can also help with PvE and also PvP. And you could use specific types damage, although it could be a little bit on the experimental side, because you're building the gear specifically for a unit to attack. So basically you see one right here that says anti-defender damage, which is obviously doing more damage against defenders. This could help out with PvP wise as well, but also in specific content for PvE, certain bosses or whatever it throws at you that's under the defender type. Now, what you could also do as well is use the crit damage resistance. This could also be something that's pretty good. I tend to use crit damage resistance on the armor sections only, but only if it has something to do with the HP set. So I have at least 1 or 2 HP sets for the Maze gear, and so far, I do see a bit of a difference that's on there, and the unit does tend to resist a bit more, just because units that have a high in crit, that can also give a unit a chance to survive against that crit damage and whatnot. Now, as you can see here for the tier 6s, and I know you see like a bit of the tier 7s, but as you progress further into the game, the game starts to become a lot more difficult, and you're going to need to invest more into your gear by increasing the enhancements, which will then further increase the main stats. This is very important. You want to try, this is more of like a long-term goal that you want to do for your Maze gear. You want to eventually get that up there to tier 7. This would, because if you keep keeping it at tier 6, the further you go up into the game, especially if you're going to be doing high level dives and dimension trimmings, you're going to start seeing that cruel reality of you're gonna hit a wall, basically. So yeah, definitely long-term wise, always good to get your gear up there to tier 7. Now, in terms of like, let's say you get a bunch of, what is it, fodder gear, right? You get any type of fodder gear. Rather than trying to just, delete them, it's best to just feed them into your gear. The gear that you're prioritizing on, that you're planning on keeping, which is, the gold set from here. Why is that? Because it's just a lot better to do it that way, because it ends up saving you more resources. Like, let's say if you had enhancements, rather than using the enhancements, you could just keep using the fodder gear to slowly build this up. Now, what is it for? So, for starters, how many of the gears should you get, right? So, I would say at least have 3 to 4 gear sets of skill haste, and at least have 2 to 3 attack speed of maze, and at least maybe 1 to 2 HP set for maze gear. And you could pretty much get some of these for free, honestly. Like, just go into the shop section, and under the danger close and the gauntlet section. Now, this is for like counters wise. There's about 5 sets. If I remember correctly, there's about 5 sets that you can get altogether within the danger close and the gauntlets for counters. Now, there are some gear sets for soldiers and mechs within the danger close and the gauntlet section, but I don't think it's as many as it usually is for counters. But either way, you can just grind those up over time, and then you can just start purchasing those, those gear sets. Now, this is not the only method to acquire more maze gear sets. You can go for the workshop, and in the workshop, there's a section here where you could just, spend the reverse engineered parts. This can get you, specific weapons on here. However, you got to be mindful that this is random. So the game's going to randomize the maze gear that it's going to give you. So it's not going to be the specific ones that you may want or so you would have to keep trying to do that. Now, there's also a universal section as well that requires a different type of currency, which is the dimension cube. The dimension cubes is usually the top end game content that you would have to do in order to acquire these. So you have to farm that dimension trimming missions to acquire this currency here, to acquire that. But other than that, that's pretty much what you could go for. Now, again, I want to go back to the section of the HP set for the maze gear. Now, for the HP set, you could do something like this, or you don't even have to honestly get the set for this. You could just end up going for, you don't even need to get a full set of HP set for the maze gear. You could just do a mix match of it with the inhibitor gear and the armor section of the armor type of the maze gear. You could do that as well, and you could do any type of combinations or what you want. It's up to you. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the maze gear section. So now we're going to be going over to the Gordius section. Okay, so the Gordius section is basically, this type of gear set is basically more on the defense side of things. So as you can see here, it has there's some that says ranged damage defense resistance, and melee damage resistance, and you can have anti-ground damage resistance to this. This is basically what I tend to use in terms of for like raids, PvE wise, sometimes PvP, but I tend to use like attack speed on here for specific units if I want them to stay alive longer, while also having certain units being able to benefit from the attack speed. Some units benefit off of that, but I sometimes tend to have them wear specific gear to try and keep them alive longer. I tend to use skill haste as well on Gordius. You could use that. You could definitely start using the HP set for the Gordius. I think that the HP set would fit a lot better with the Gordius on here. Now, for the defense, you could use that, but it may vary. It just depends on what you want to do. What type of strategy that you want to perform on this. But other than that, yeah, this is basically, and again, as you can see here, it's like locked on here, just like the base gear. So you don't really have to worry too much about, you know, what you should do for the first options on here, and you can obviously change the second option on here. And the anti-ground damage resistance is usually like the best set to, like the best option to go for, or one of the best option to go for. Now sometimes you could do an anti-ground damage on here, but again, this type of thing is more experimental wise. You could add in a anti-ranger damage resistance, so basically you're being resistant to a specific type of unit or what their class is. And in this term, it would be rangers. So anybody who's like a ranger type, you know, having that gear set will make you a little bit more resistant to that specific unit. But other than that, yeah, this is also a set that you can acquire. It's limited, but you can acquire a few sets of Gordius through, I would believe, the Danger Close section and also the PvP section, the Gauntlet shop. Just in case, just to check from here. But yeah, Danger Close, yeah, you can acquire some Gordius from there. And then in the Gauntlet section, you can acquire some Gordius as well. But in this terms for this, it looks like they separated them. They used to be all in one together, but now they've been separated. So yeah, you can get the gears you get that free gear set by, you know, grinding the Danger Close and grinding the PvP for points to eventually purchase it through here. Other than that, there really isn't much to really say on there. Only just that these are, you know, the Gordius is usually for more defense. So if you want more defense wise on this, then you can just go for this. And Maze gear, of course, is more on the offensive side of things. Now, you probably have this question of like, okay, well, which one should I invest in first? Well, that's up to you. Like, it depends on what your account needs. Depends on what you're looking for to, you know, what results you're trying to go for. But I mean, it's always good. Like at the end of the day, it's good to have both of them. It's good to have both of them leveled up. It's nice to have both of them, you know, have the sets for the ones that you want for both. But depending on which one you should invest in first, that's completely up to you. Now, the reason why I'm talking about the Maze and the Gordius first is because it's a lot easier to acquire, or in terms, it's you don't spend as much resources as you normally would with the relic gears, and we're gonna get to the relic gears section soon. So yeah, it's just that it's a lot easier to, you know, acquire the set binaries that you would want and the tuning binaries and changing it to the stats that you're looking for or what's best suited for you. Now, in the next section, we're going to be going to the relic gear, which starting with Reacher. Okay, so we are now in the Britra relic gear section. So let me start by saying this. So relic gears are a bit unique. And what I mean by that is that they do give an extra set of stats boosts, which is called the latent abilities. So usually the relic gears are a bit more expensive resource wise, because yes, you can farm a lot of them through the raids and acquiring currency to be able to use to purchase more relic gears. But the thing is that, you know, a lot of it's always randomized, even the ones that you acquire within the raid. And sometimes, you know, you get what you want from the latent abilities, and sometimes you don't. Now, in terms of not having the latent abilities at all, and if you just don't care about the latent abilities, you just want to be, you know what specific gear sets that you, what specific sets of options that you want to use and the substats for it, well, you could just use the attack speed for it. That's a pretty good option to go for. You could also use the crit damage. You can set that to like crit damage for them, or what is it? You can use the anti-ground damage. You can use the anti-ground damage defense resistance, which is, you know, good for the armor section on there. And for this one, you could use anti-ground damage. You can always set that up nicely. The crit damage percentages is always a good thing. The Britcher gear usually, I guess you could say that that's one of its specialties right there, is to try to do as much damage as possible, because it's really not recommended to use any of the raw stats. The raw stats here, they do little to nothing at all. You want to go for the percentages. So it's always good to always keep your Britcher gear as crit damage. So if it doesn't have that on there, it's always nice to use your tuning binaries to change that into the crit damage section. Now, anything else what you want for the second option, I mean, this could be a little debatable on this. It depends on what you want to do, what you're aiming to do. But normally, like by default, most players tend to go for the anti-ground damage instead. Now, you could also go for skill haste as well for the Britcher gear. That's always a good option to have. And you could go for the crit. Now, the crit version of it, I would say it's more experimental than anything. More experimental than anything. I haven't really tried out the HP set version for it, because I mean, Britcher is supposed to be more offensive than anything. So it's just probably best to probably just try to get a few of these, like you know, attack speed and skill haste. And if you're wondering like, oh well, what number should I get, like how many sets should I get, you could always just base it off of the original set idea of what I recommended before with the maze gear. You could always do that, do about 3 to 4 skill haste for the set, and at least 2 to 3 for the attack speed set. Because I mean, as you start to do that, you now beginning to realize that it's starting to add up for your team, and now you're able to, you know, equip your team with a lot more efficient gear, with, you know, it's full of attack speed and skill haste. Now, if you care about the latent abilities, if you want to use the Britcher set to its full potential, then you would need to put in a little bit more effort in looking for a specific set a specific latent ability that you want. Sometimes you'll get what you want on there, other times you won't. Crit damage is a pretty good one that you could go for, and one of the great ones that you would want to go for is melee damage and ranged damage. Those are the two that's really good to get. Now, this is really unique in a way, and it's kind of unique in a way, because basically the range damage is for just basically units that likes to attack far away. So if they're in a range if they're in a ranged position, then they'll be doing extra damage along with the crit on there because they're in their respective field when attacking. Of course, if they were to, let's say, get too close to the unit and they're in close quarters combat, then what's going to happen is that this is not, I would assume that this is not going to proc because they're going to be in the melee section when they're too close. So let's say if they were too close, right? Then this would end up proccing. They would end up using the melee damage because they're in a melee section of the field. But of course, if they were to be further away from the unit that wants to, go into close quarters combat with them, then the ranged section, the ranged latent power would then start to proc. And that's usually how it works. Of course, if anybody, anybody watching or whatever, if you have any extra information on what the range damage and the melee damage does, then hey, feel free to let me know in the comment section. But other than that, yeah, this is all melee wise. So this is the section that you can use is mostly attack speed and skill haste. You could go with the crit damage as well on here. Let's see. So we end up going here. Yeah, you can use the crit damage. Now this, I would say that maybe this could be a more of an experimental thing, possibly. But it just depends. It depends on you. It depends on what you want to do. It depends on whatever the latent that you want. Now, also too, one important thing that I also forgot to mention, right? Let's see. Let's go all the way down for a second. Any type of relic gear that you get, which is Britra, inhibitor. Any one of those relic gears that is purple rank SR, you do not waste your resources in leveling those up. You can still use them, sure, but once you come across gold tier gear, there is no point in even trying to even waste resources in leveling those up. Save that for your gold tier gear, and the ones that you want to prioritize on. That has a if it has the latent ability that you want, and you want to keep that gear set, then it's best to just dedicate your resources to that. Don't dedicate resources in leveling up the purple gear, because eventually you're gonna end up culling these out anyway, and you're gonna end up replacing these. So there's no point in investing, a bunch of enhancements into it, or even feeding fodder gear into it. You can if you want to, but I wouldn't recommend it because it's just not worth it. Because it's not the best that you can get. The best ones you can get is obviously the gold ones. So yeah, just remember that. Just don't even waste your time. These are eventually these will become fodders as well. And remember, don't even burn them. Just feed them into other gear sets. I do have a video explaining that a little bit. It's called the Where Do I Begin in CounterSide. So yeah, you could feel free to check that out. And I talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, I thought that I should let you guys know that, because I don't want you guys to make a mistake and just start investing like +7s on a purple gear set. So yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the the Britra gear. So now we're gonna end up going to the inhibitor gear section. Okay, so we are in the inhibitor section. Now, of course, This is also a relic gear, and inhibitor is more on the defense side of things. So usually what I usually tend to go for is that, you can go for HP set. I have a little bit of here. You can even do mixed matches, which I like the inhibitor for defense wise, because you can mix match gear sets with it, like a few maze and a few inhibitor here and there, vice versa, and all that. But yeah, HP sets is one of the ones that you can go for. The defense set you can go for, but again, this one also varies, even with the, even the same as the maze section. Just depends on what you're looking for, what you want to do. It's up to you. One of the important things too is actually, no, I'm gonna go to that section later. But the skill haste, you can do skill haste on it. That's another pretty good one that you can go for. And now the attack speed will vary. You don't necessarily need to do that. I guess you could say it's in between like experimental and also, something that could work out pretty good. I usually tend to use it on units that thrive off of it or is a fury unit, and this will, try to keep them alive a little bit longer. As you can see for the first section here, you can get the anti-counter damage resistance, which is pretty good, especially if you're going to be facing a lot of counters either in PvE or in PvP. Now also too, I have a few sections here that says like range or resistance. It's based on what you want to do or not, or you could just overall just go for ground damage. Can't really go wrong with anti-ground damage resistance or anti-ground damage for offensive gear sets. Now in terms of the latent abilities, also too, you can go with there was one that I did have as well. I think there's a crit resistance. Let me see. I do have a gear set that does that. Or at least I thought I did. No. Okay, yeah, never mind. But yeah, it's you can't really go wrong with anti-ground damage resistance. It's a pretty good set. Pretty good thing to have. Now, in terms of the latent abilities, you could go for range damage resistance. You could go for crit damage resistance. That's probably what I was going for. Yeah, the crit damage resistance. This can prove to be helpful as well. Range damage resistance, and also you can get the melee damage resistance as well. So it does tell you about what's available on here, and you can go for the melee damage resistance. I mean, I got a few of them on one of my units, but so far for me personally, it's been pretty rare to get. So you could also go for the skill haste as well if you want to build that skill haste up and have them resist damage at the same time. I've, in my experience of using this multiple times, it's definitely come through for me. The HP set you could go for, but I mean, it just depends on what you want to do. And the speed set. Now, the speed set is a very unique thing. This is unique to a specific unit, which is Maestra. But other than that, you're not going to really need the speed for any other unit besides Maestra. Unless, someday if they come out with another unit that wants to benefit off speed, like the collab unit. The collab unit from, is it okay to hit on girls in a dungeon? I think that's what it's called. That's, they're the awakened unit. They could benefit a little bit off of the speed. I mean, they're already fast as it is, but it's up to you. But other than that, whichever latent that you want to get, these are the ones that I tend to use, which I've found that is, pretty useful. And sometimes the majority of players, they usually tend to go for these things: the melee defense and the range damage defense. Those resistances, the crit damage resistances, the skill haste, the HP sets. It just, you know, overall it depends on what you're looking for, what you want. But other than that, yeah, that's pretty much it for the inhibitor gear for that section. So now we're gonna end up going to the Swift section. Okay, so we are in the Swift relic gear section, and so for Swift, you could use skill haste. Now, if I remember correctly, the skill haste for Swift, the Swift gear gives the most skill haste out of the other relic gear sets and also the maze gear. But you got to be extremely lucky in trying to get the latent ability for it. So if you can get the latent ability for the skill haste for all 4 sets, then you can use the first section to get skill haste as well. And not only that, but you can also use a set options for getting the skill haste. It's a very, very phenomenal set to have for your units. At least try to get like I currently have one for my counters, and I'm currently trying to complete another set for my soldier units. And eventually I'm going to start going to try for my mechs. It's definitely a good set to have. You definitely see a really big difference in that. And you know, proccing their special skills and their ultimates a lot faster. Could end up using the attack speed as well. Attack speed does prove to be pretty good on Swift gear. Although I would think that, you know, sometimes it does vary a little bit depending on, you know, what unit that you're giving this to. But other than that, you could go for crit damage resistance as a latent. From time to time, I found that pretty useful, especially if you're gonna give this to Jimbora and she's benefiting off of the, you know, attack speed. When you're, you know, attacking, let's say like a raid boss, like what is it, like Britra from like level 130 or level 150, you can use her against Britra. And you can even use this on the Worm raid boss as well for Consortums. You can use that for a certain point, at a certain point against the Worm. Now, I also found that this set does work a little bit as well with the defense and the HP set. You could use that, have a little bit of the HP for a latent on here. But, I mean, it just depends. Now, the attack percentages, I haven't paid too much attention on the attack percentages, so I'm not sure what would happen if all your latents had, you know, a lot higher than that. It could be good, although I've always been trying to focus on the attack speed and the skill haste section. So, I mean, if anybody who are using the attack percentages on here, if you have any extra information or of, you know, how useful it could be, feel free to let me know in the comment section. But other than that, now for speed, this is also a pretty good one to have for Maestra. So Maestra benefits a lot off of this when it comes down to speed. Like, if you want to see Maestra just go like Mach 5 mode, Maestra edition, and you could put that on there, and you know, you could use a ship to proc the speed even more. You can even use an operator to make it go even faster, and she'll reach the halfway of the map like a ridiculous amount. It's crazy. But I mean, of course, you know, knowing Maestra, I mean, you're going to be sacrificing a lot of, I guess you could say, maybe health-wise or something like that. But I guess it just depends. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much what I use for the Swift gears. Now, of course, like I was telling you guys before, there's hundreds of combinations that you can go for, but these are the ones that I usually go for that usually helps me get through PvP content and PvE content. So next we're going to be going to the next section, which is the wild gear. Okay, so we are now in the wild section. So wild gear, I would say, is more defense wise and healing wise. As you can see here, the wild gear is, along with the flame gear, they have very unique functions. Their set options are just it's just like it's different. You can do a lot of combinations with those things. You can do a lot of interesting experimental things. I tend to sometimes see the wild and flame gear sets as experimental sets. They can be incredibly powerful at times, and also too, like in terms for the wild gear, they're very good in terms of healing. Like you can get a large amount of heals and you can keep your team alive. Now it kind of varies, and it depends also what you want to do with this, because if you were to put this all as a full heal section right here, which is good for your support units, that tends to, you know, heal other units and whatnot, but you would be able to do this at the expense of not having faster skill haste. Now what you could do is that you could use a different skill haste section that this gear set offers. As you can see, it's like there are a whole bunch of different types of sets. It's not like it's not like the typical ones that you would normally see from Swift, Inhibitor, Britra, Gordius, or Maze. Instead, these specific type of relic gears follow a very specific type of rules. So they have a lot of different other sections on here, and you can experiment a lot with these on here. It just depends. It depends on you as the player, you know. It depends on what you're looking for, what your account needs on here, which is why I said it's always good to have at least one or two copies of these type of gear sets here. I haven't delved too deep into this type of gear set, but I am experimenting with it, and I have found that, you know, the incoming healing is just phenomenal for units like Yuna, who's very dependent on that, and also, you know, the outgoing set as well. With the latent abilities on here, you can, you know, do a little mix match of that. And so far, having a full set of that has proven to be pretty useful, even though, you know, you're sacrificing a bit of the skill haste reduction. Now also too, you can get away with this by adding in another unit that, you know, that can give skill haste to the entire party. Units like Yang Harem or Awakened Shinja. You can use units like that to lower, you know, the skill haste a bit more, which then it's almost as if you never had. Yeah, it's almost as if you didn't give up your skill haste set. So that can go pretty well, especially if you put this on Chinatsu. Oh man, keeping Chinatsu alive. Chinatsu could keep a lot of people alive, especially if Yang Harem and Awakened Shinja is on the field with him. So something to think about. Now also too, you can go for the barrier enhancements. This is one of this is one of the unique sets that, you know, that can give barrier enhancement besides the Phantom gear, and you can do some real interesting things with this. You know, keeping the team alive, both PvE and PvP wise. It just depends on, you know, what strategy that you're looking to do. But this is normally what I usually go for so far for the wild gear, because it's usually more on the defense and survivability side. So you can always try to go for incoming healing, or you can go for outgoing healing. And I mean, you could experiment a little bit more with the whole skill haste section, especially if you use units like Revenant. You can use that, you know, add a bit more for the barrier side of things and for skill haste. It's up to you what you want to do. Of course, too, you know, you can use the anti-ground damage resistance as well to, you know, add more a little bit of defense to your unit. Or, you know, use units like Arius, who can benefit off of the barrier enhancement, which will give even more barriers, and doing the outgoing healing when she activates her ultimate, or even when you put her into the as soon as she, you know, arrives on the field and she starts healing people that's in that range, that, you know, they can benefit from that as well. But yeah, this was usually the set that I tend to use. Now for Maestra also uses this set as well. You can have it with the whole speed thing. I'm still currently experimenting with that a little bit, but you know, just thought I'd let you guys know that you can use, you know, a speed set for Maestra with this gear set. But other than that, you know, anything else besides that is, you know, it's up to you and what you want to look for. So now we're going to be going to the final one, which is the flame gear section. Okay, so we are now in the flame relic section. Now the flame gear is basically normally you know, it's more on the offensive side, and it has the potential to do quite a bit of damage depending on how you spec it. I tend to use the skill haste section over here. You can use that, and with the latent abilities you can go for anti-counter damage, you can go for crit damage. You can go for, like, if you want to go full, I mean, I guess you can go with the attack speed. I haven't experimented too much with the attack speed section on here. I would have to build like I would have to make like a huge build for it or something like that. But in the first options and the second ones, you know, you can use ultimate skill damage on here. You can use anti-ground damage, and the set option is ultimate. Now, what I tend to do with this is that the ultimate skill damage amp, it does a lot of damage. It can do that. But the thing is, what you have to keep in mind is that there's no skill haste to this. If you decide to use, you know, if you decide to get your gear to be like this, to be spec'd out like that, to use ultimate skill damage on there, you will definitely need a unit that can synergize with them to build their skill haste faster. If you can do that, then yeah, this would be quite the nightmare for in PvE and PvP. If you can manage to get the unit to activate their ultimate on there, depending on what you're, you know, depending on who you're giving the gear to. Now, what you could also do is, you know, you could have the latent abilities have the ultimate skill damage as well on here. You can change it into special skill damage over here. This is pretty much what you can do with it. You can do defense penetration. Like this type of gear set right here is like you can choose. It just depends on what type of build you want for the first option, and then you just choose it. Because in my opinion, all three of those are good. In terms of this right here, since it's more offensive, I mean, you could just go straight up for the glass cannon build and have it, you know, have them do anti-ground damage. You can always select that, or do specific damage to a specific type. Or, I mean, you could go a little bit on the defensive side just to have a little bit of survivability with the anti-ground damage. Can't usually go wrong with that. But aside from that, this is more of a glass cannon type gear set. It's meant to do a lot of damage. So I mean, you pretty much would want to use like the anti-dam ground damage rather than the resistant version of it. Again, I did mention before with the anti-counter, that could be pretty good. And of course, hold on, let's go to the change set section. Again, you can see that it has a lot of other things on here. Now you could do a defense penetration, which that has proven to do some pretty good damage, especially towards specific challenge quests sometimes, but some of them. You could go for the special damage amp. Specific units could really use this type of special right there. They could do quite a bit of damage depending on what you get into. And there's the attack speed, which is a 2 set. If you want, you could just give it the attack speed and the skill haste speed. You can experiment a little bit with that. But yeah, that's pretty much it with the flame gear on here. And again, you could have at least, it's always good to have at least 1 or 2 sets of the flame gear. I mean, you could also, again, if you're gonna get any extra ones, you can always experiment a little bit. But keep in mind, the relic gears, they use up a lot of resources because of the latent abilities, especially if you're trying to look for a specific latent ability. And, that can get quite expensive. So yeah, this is the latent abilities that the flame gear tends to use. If you're lucky enough to acquire some of these. But yeah, at the end of the day too, it's it's up to you what you want to do with the latent abilities, what you're looking for. But yeah, that's pretty much it with the flame gear. Section on here, that's a few of them that you could tend to use to try and help get you further through the PvE content and the PvP content on there. But yeah, but like I was saying before, again, there's like that's only like a few of the options that you could go for that can and will help you out. But also too, there's plenty more options and combinations that you can go for, which is why this game is pretty awesome when it's able to do something like that, because it's like almost every day you're learning something new for different combinations and whatnot for the gear sets. But yeah, if you guys, I'm curious to know, like, what other builds that you guys have, what combinations are good for units for PvE and even PvP. Curious to know what you came up with, and feel free to write it into the comment section. But I hope this video helps you guys out. I hope it gives you some type of idea of what you want to do for your builds. Hopefully this will make it a lot easier for you to decide what to do or when to start investing in your gear. Again, as soon as you get your Maze and Gordius, you can start immediately spending the set options and the tuning binaries on those to get what you want from there. And also to the when it comes down to the relic gears, like the Britra, Inhibitor, Swift, Wild, and Flame, just be mindful that those tend to take up a bit more resources depending on the latent abilities that you want. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Hopefully it helps you guys out. Hey, if you found this pretty helpful, feel free to give this video a like. But other than that, I'm out of here, guys. Catch you later.